Perhaps you already know what you need to do to achieve your goals. This is the part nobody mentions. The problem was never a lack of information. You have enough information. You have more plans than most people will write in their entire lives. More ideas than most will put into practice. The problem is that your mind doesn't stop long enough for anything to become real. And at some point, silently, you began to wonder if this is who you are. If this is normal, if you are lazy, you've probably compared yourself to other people your age, or perhaps younger than you. People who have already achieved many dreams, who have already accomplished many things, and that makes you wonder, is this who I am? Do you know the answer? It is not. In 1956, a cognitive psychologist named George Miller published a study that changed how we understand the human mind. The discovery was accurate. The conscious mind can process at most 7 units of information at the same time. 7, not 70, not 700. Each thought added beyond that limit does not expand reasoning. It collapses it. There is a word in Japanese, Ichigyo-zammai, which doesn't have a direct translation into English. This word describes a state of complete absorption in a single action. Not focus, not concentration, something deeper. A total fusion between the person and what is being done. The concept comes from Zen Buddhist practice, where monks were trained to bring this quality not only to meditation, but to sweeping a floor, washing a bowl, serving tea. The Japanese didn't create this concept because they were spiritual. They created it because they understood something about the human mind that Western productivity culture has spent 50 years trying to circumvent. A mind divided against itself produces nothing. There is a second concept, ichi-go-ichie. Literally once one encounter, the idea that this moment, this exact moment, will never exist again. Not as a philosophy, as a fact. The conversation you're having, the work ahead of you, the seconds you're spending listening to these words, are happening only once. The mind that's elsewhere while the moment passes isn't resting. It's missing something it will never get back. And there is a third concept, Fudōshin, an unwavering mind, not an empty mind. A mind trained to remain present under pressure. The samurai concept of mental stability that has nothing to do with calmness and everything to do with grounding. 3 concepts, 1 problem. 7 days. But before I explain in more detail how these concepts can help you overcome excessive thoughts, I want to introduce you to Lucas Cole. Lucas is 24 years old. He lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, New York, which he shares with a roommate he barely sees. He does freelance video editing, good enough to get work, inconsistent enough to never build a client base. On any given Tuesday, he has 4 unfinished projects open on his computer, unanswered emails from clients, a Notion board with 47 tasks organized by color, and a browsing history that looks like that of a man searching for the answer to a question he hasn't yet been able to formulate. Just like you watching this video, his problem wasn't laziness. That's the first thing you need to understand about Lucas. His problem is that he's drowning in his own mind. Chapter 1, a mind that never stops. I want to start by naming something you probably feel but have never accurately described, because overthinking doesn't look like what people imagine. It's not visible anguish. It's not panic. In most cases, it looks like productivity. It looks like planning. It looks like responsibility. That's why it's so hard to identify and so hard to stop. It was a Thursday morning when Lucas opened his laptop for the 10th time that week with the genuine intention of working. Not the intention to plan work, not the intention to organize the work environment. Real work, opening the editing file, putting on headphones, starting. At 9:17 a.m. he opened the file. At 9:23 a.m. I was on YouTube watching a video about pricing strategies for freelancers, a topic that had zero relation to the project open in the other tab. At 10:05 a.m. I was reading an article about how content creators were using artificial intelligence to scale production. I took notes. Good notes. Notes I would never use. At 11:30 a.m. he reorganized Notion again. At 1 p.m. he closed his laptop and went to lunch with the familiar feeling of having worked all morning without having accomplished anything truly relevant at that moment. Neuroscience has a name for what Lucas was experiencing: default mode network. the brain's default mode network. It's the neural system that activates when you're not engaged in any specific task. In normal doses, it's healthy. It's where reflection, creativity, memory processing, etc. take place. Lucas's problem, and perhaps yours, is that this network never shuts down. Researchers at Harvard University conducted a study in 2010 that tracked more than 2,000 adults in real time. The finding: people spend almost 50% of their waking time with their minds elsewhere than the present activity. And this state, the wandering mind, was consistently associated with lower levels of satisfaction, regardless of what the person was doing. A wandering mind never rests, it drains. Lucas knew this intuitively, even without having the words to name it. He knew that each morning began with genuine energy and ended with an exhaustion that didn't come from physical work. It came from carrying the weight of 10 imaginary conversations, 15 hypothetical scenarios, and the silent comparison with at least 6 people he followed online, who seemed to have discovered something he hadn't yet. The mechanism is specific and worth understanding. When the mind processes multiple streams of thought simultaneously, the unfinished project, worries about money, comparisons with other creators, plans for next month, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and sustained focus, begins to operate at a deficit. Neuroscientists call this ego depletion in the oldest literature, and of cognitive load overflow, according to the most recent research. The practical effect is simple. The more you think about everything at once, the less you are able to think deeply about anything at once. Lucas didn't have an intelligence deficit. He had excessive processing power. And the cruelest thing about this mechanism is what it does to time. Not clock time, perceived time. A mind that lives in the future and the past simultaneously experiences the present as a waiting room, something to get through before arriving somewhere. And since you can't build anything in a waiting room, the years pass with the feeling that nothing has been built. At 24, Lucas had the feeling of being behind. That others had started earlier, understood something sooner, made a decision that he was still procrastinating on. The truth is, he wasn't late. He was absent. There was a fundamental difference between these two states, and understanding it was the first step toward what would come next. But Lucas didn't know that yet. He was still reorganizing Notion. Chapter 2. What the Japanese understood 500 years ago. In 1645, Musashi retired to a cave called Reigando on the island of Kyushu and spent the last months of his life writing. The result was The Book of Five Rings, a treatise on strategy, combat, and the mind that continues to be studied by executives, athletes, and military personnel to this day. But what most people miss when they read Musashi is this: he wasn't writing about how to win fights. He was writing about how to inhabit the moment of combat so completely that the notion of winning or losing becomes secondary. Don't think dishonestly. The path lies in training. This sentence seems simple. It's not. Don't think dishonestly doesn't mean don't lie. It means don't let your mind construct false versions of reality, scenarios that don't exist, threats that haven't arrived, victories that haven't yet happened. A dishonest mind is a mind that lives in a place other than the present moment. Musashi had identified something that neuroscience would confirm centuries later. The greatest enemy of human performance is not external pressure. It is the internal narrative that the mind constructs while the action is taking place. This is where Ichigyo-zammai enter. The concept originates in the writings of the 13th century Zen master Dogen, but its practical application has spread throughout all Japanese arts, from martial arts to the tea ceremony, from calligraphy to cooking. The central idea is this: there is a quality of presence that only manifests when you give your complete attention to a single thing. Not 90%, not with a mental tab open for other matters, completely. And this quality is not merely philosophical. It is measurable. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian-American psychologist who dedicated decades to the study of what he called flow state, identified that moments of greatest satisfaction, creativity, and human performance invariably occur when a person is completely absorbed in an activity of a difficulty level compatible with their ability, without divided attention, without external monitoring, without concern for the outcome, What Csikszentmihalyi called flow, the Zen masters called Ichigyo-zammai 700 years ago. The difference is that the Japanese didn't treat this as a special state to be achieved under ideal conditions. They treated it as a daily discipline to be cultivated under ordinary conditions. Sweeping the floor with complete attention is no less noble than meditating. It's the same training. Now, Ichigyo-ichie. The concept was formalized by the tea master Sen no Rikyu in the 16th century, but it permeates Japanese sensibility in ways that go far beyond the tea ceremony. Literally translated as once one encounter, the concept stems from a factual premise. This moment will never be repeated. Not as a poetic metaphor, as a physical reality. The encounter you're having right now, with these ideas, with this video, with any thought that arose while you were listening, is happening only once. The version of you listening to this now won't exist tomorrow. There will be a slightly different version with a more enriching experience. What Ichigyo-ichie, what it requires, is that you treat each moment with the weight it deserves. Not with drama, with attention, because the alternative, spending the present moment thinking about the next one, is literally wasting the only version of this moment that will ever exist. For Lucas, this idea was still abstract. He had heard something similar before. Live in the present. Be grateful, and had dismissed it as the kind of phrase that appears in cursive fonts over photos of sunsets. He still hadn't understood that Ichigyo-ichie, it's not a philosophy of gratitude. It's a philosophy of consequence, and the consequence of ignoring the present moment is not philosophical. It's practical. It's concrete. It's the accumulation of days lived halfway that added together form years with nothing accomplished. Lucas was about to understand this in a way he hadn't planned. Chapter 3, the day the mind went freeze. It was a Saturday. Lucas had woken up with the specific goal of finishing an editing project that was 11 days overdue. Client waiting. Payment held. Simple situation, clear solution. Open the file, edit, deliver. At 8:45 a.m. I was facing the screen. His mind immediately began to wander. To the email he needed to answer. To the new client who had messaged him the previous week and whom he hadn't responded to because he didn't know how much to charge and hadn't yet decided on his pricing structure. To the fact that his pricing structure didn't yet exist because he hadn't decided on his positioning strategy. To the fact that his positioning depended on knowing what kind of work he wanted to do in 5 years. To the fact that he didn't know what he wanted to do in 5 years. In 4 minutes, I had gone from editing the video to what is the point of what I'm building? Lucas closed the file. He opened Instagram. 20 minutes later, I was looking at the profile of a 22-year-old creator, 2 years younger than Lucas, with 300,000 followers, an editing agency, and a post about the trip he had taken to Japan using money from his own business. Lucas stared at that post for longer than he should have, with that specific feeling that isn't exactly envy and isn't exactly sadness. It's the feeling that there's a version of your life happening somewhere else, on a timeline you lost access to, because you made the wrong decisions, because you started late, because you're fundamentally different from the kind of person who can do these things. Lucas closed the app. He opened the laptop, created a new document in Notion called Definitive Plan version 7. He spent 90 minutes planning. At 1 p.m., the editing project remained untouched. The client messaged asking about the deadline. Lucas replied that he would deliver it on Monday. He closed his laptop. He went for a walk without a destination. It was during this walk that something happened that wasn't planned. He stopped at a small cafe on Atlantic Avenue, the kind of place that exists to be ignored. No Instagram aesthetics, no lines, no flashy sign. You went in because you needed to use the restroom. On the back wall, there was an old television showing a silent, subtitled documentary. Lucas watched it for less than 30 seconds before leaving, but what he saw in those 30 seconds stayed with him. He was a Japanese craftsman, old with large hands living in simple surroundings. He was making something out of wood, perhaps a piece of furniture, perhaps an instrument. It wasn't possible to tell from the angle. What was possible to determine, even without sound, even in 30 seconds, was this: that man was nowhere else but where he was. There was no rush. There were no distractions. There were none of the micro-interruptions that Lucas associated with work. checking his phone, changing windows, getting up to get water when he wasn't thirsty. There was a man and a piece of wood, and nothing else. Lucas left the cafe unable to name exactly what he had felt. But the image remained. That night, for a reason he couldn't explain, he searched for the documentary. It took him 40 minutes to find it. It was a film about Japanese artisans and the philosophy that guided their work. One of the first things the narrator mentioned was a concept Lucas had never heard of before: Ichigyo-zammai. He read the definition 3 times, and for the first time in a long time, something stopped moving inside his head. Chapter 4. An unwavering mind is not an empty mind. Lucas spent the next 3 days researching. This time he researched in a different way than usual. He didn't open 20 tabs, didn't take notes he would never use, didn't build a system to organize what he learned. Before he actually learned it, he read slowly, one thing at a time. He closed one tab before opening another. It was uncomfortable. My mind kept pulling to one side. Open this link, check that notification. You don't need to understand it so deeply. And he realized for the first time clearly how automatic that pull was. It wasn't a choice. It was a reflex. I was reading about Fudōshin that he understood the distinction he had been searching for without knowing it. Fudōshin, an unwavering mind, is not a state of absence. It is the mind that has been exposed to pressure repeatedly, that knows the pull of chaos, and that has learned not to follow that chaos automatically. The samurai who practiced Fudōshin, that was what I had trained my mind to do, not let fear make the decision. Neuroscience research confirms the mechanism. The amygdala, the brain structure responsible for the threat response, processes anxiety stimuli in milliseconds before the prefrontal cortex has time to assess whether the threat is real. In people with chronic overthinking, this alarm system is calibrated to activate not only in the face of real threats, but also in the face of uncertainty, open-ended decisions, and social comparisons. The result is a mind in a permanent state of alert, with no real danger in sight. Fudōshin, it doesn't deactivate the amygdala. It trains the prefrontal cortex to respond faster, to recognize the alarm, name what's happening, and redirect attention to what's in front of you. This doesn't happen through insight. It happens through repetition, and it was here that Lucas understood the structure of the 7 days, not as a transformation program, as 7 days of deliberate practice, simple enough to execute, specific enough to work. The 7 days, the practical structure. Day 1, naming the noise. Before changing anything, the first step is to observe what is happening without trying to correct it. For 24 hours, Lucas set out to notice, simply notice, each time his mind wandered from the present activity, without judgment. Without correction, just a mental marker. I left. Most people underestimate this day because it seems passive. It's not. It's the hardest day, because most people have never paid enough attention to realize how much the mind wanders. When you start counting, the number is unsettling. Lucas counted 43 times in a period of 6 hours. Day 2, one thing until the end. On the second day, Lucas chose one task, just one, and committed to not changing activities until it was complete or until an hour had passed. No checking his phone, no opening new tabs, no getting up. When his mind wandered elsewhere, and it did so constantly, he didn't fight the thought. He acknowledged it and returned. He acknowledged it and returned. This is the central mechanism of Ichigyo-zammai practice. It's not the absence of distraction. It's the deliberate return to the present action, repeated until the return becomes faster than the escape. By the end of the second day, Lucas had completed more concrete work than in the previous 5 days that had been agreed upon. That wasn't a productivity hack. What happened was that Lucas had stopped dividing his mind between what he was doing and everything he could be doing. Day 3, the weight of the moment. The third day was about ichigyo-ichie, and it was the most counterintuitive of the 7. The instruction was simple. Before beginning any activity, Lucas should spend 30 seconds explicitly acknowledging that this moment would not be repeated. Not as a spiritual ritual, as a technical fact. This conversation with this client, once. This hour of work on this project, once. This breakfast, once. The effect wasn't immediate, but there was a cumulative effect that Lucas began to notice on the third day. When you treat the moment as unique, the urgency to be somewhere else diminishes. Because the internal logic changes. If this is only happening once, then it makes sense to be here. Day 4, practice the return. The 4th day was dedicated exclusively to the mechanism of Fudōshin. The practice. Each time Lucas noticed his mind wandering to comparison, excessive planning or rumination, he was to name the type of thought aloud or in writing. Comparison, hypothetical scenario, rumination, over-planning. Naming a thought activates the prefrontal cortex in a measurable way. This is what researchers call to effect labeling, and studies show that naming a mental experience significantly reduces its emotional intensity. You don't eliminate the thought. You remove the automatic charge it carries. The samurai doesn't eliminate fear. He acknowledges it, names it, and continues toward what needs to be done. Day 5, reduce before expanding. Lucas spent the 5th day with a single instruction: to shorten the list. Don't prioritize the 47 items in Notion. Delete them. Choose 3, only 3 that, if completed, would have a real impact. The other 44 weren't tasks. They were noise disguised as organization. This distinction is critical. Overthinking often hides within systems. Long lists, complex plans, periodic reorganizations of the work environment. All of these create a sense of progress without requiring the risk of execution. Ichigyo-zammai, it doesn't work with 47 open tasks. It works when there's one thing in front of you, and you decide that that thing deserves everything you have. Day 6, exposure to discomfort. The 6th day was the hardest, and the most necessary. Lucas chose the task he had been avoiding the longest, the one that caused the most internal resistance, the one that, when it appeared at the top of the list, immediately produced the urge to do something else first. The instruction: sit facing this task for 45 minutes without any other options. No other tabs open, no cell phone within reach, no permission to do anything other than confront that specific task or sit silently before it. The resistance Lucas felt in the first 15 minutes was physical. Restlessness in his legs, an urge to stand up, a feeling that he needed more information before starting, more time to think, a better plan. He remained seated. At 22 minutes, the resistance gave way. Not dramatically, simply the mind stopped fighting and began to work. That's it, Fudōshin in its most concrete form. The ability to remain present after the initial discomfort has passed, because you have trained your mind not to treat discomfort as a signal to stop. Day 7, doing it without witnessing. The 7th day was about silencing the ego. Lucas was supposed to work for 3 hours without documenting, posting, or mentioning to anyone what he was doing. No stories showing the setup, no tweets about the process, no notes on Notion recording the progress, just work and him. This may seem trivial, but it's not. A significant portion of modern overthinking is fueled by the need to witness oneself, to transform every action into narrative, every day into content, every effort into evidence of effort. When you remove the external observer, the mind needs to find satisfaction in its own work, and there, for the first time, Ichigyo-zammai, it happens organically. You're not doing it just to be able to say you did it. You're just doing it. At the end of the 7th day, Lucas delivered the project that had been 11 days late, and the feeling he had was incredible. That feeling of a job well done. That feeling that you did what really needed to be done. But there's something that hasn't been said until now, and that changes your understanding of everything presented here. All the concepts we've seen, Ichigyo-zammai, ichigyo-ichie, Fudōshin, are often presented as philosophies of presence, techniques for being more in the moment, antidotes to distraction. This interpretation is correct, but it's incomplete. What the Japanese masters understood is that these states are not only beneficial for well-being, they are the necessary condition for any skill to solidify. There is a process called memory consolidation. This happens during sleep, but it is preceded by the quality of attention during learning. Recent research in neuroplasticity shows that skills practiced with divided attention are consolidated significantly more weakly than skills practiced with full attention. The brain literally builds stronger neural connections when the mind is fully present in the action. What this means in practice: each hour of work with complete attention is not only more productive than 2 hours with divided attention. Those hours of complete attention build a more capable version of you. A scattered mind not only produces less, but also learns less and grows less. And the reverse is also true. Every time you practice Ichigyo-zammai, each deliberate return to the present moment, each session of work with full attention, you are not just completing a task. You are recalibrating your nervous system, building the version of yourself that will be able to sustain this state for longer tomorrow than you could today. 7 days won't cure overthinking. They begin the process of building a mind that over time prefers presence to noise. This distinction matters, because if you expect a cure, you'll give up when your mind wanders on the 3rd day. If you understand that you are training, you'll realize that the act of returning is the exercise itself. So here are 3 things for you to take with you. First, excessive thinking is not a problem of discipline, it's a problem of calibration. The mind has been trained over years to treat distraction as the default state. The mind can be retrained. Not in 7 days, but 7 days are enough to prove within your own experience that calibration is possible. Secondly, presence is not a spiritual state. It is a technical skill with measurable consequences for the quality of work, the speed of learning, and the construction of anything that requires time to become real. Ichigyo-zammai. Ichi-go, ichi-e and Fudōshin, these are not abstract concepts. They are old names for mechanisms that neuroscience is only now mapping. Thirdly, Lucas didn't transform himself in 7 days, but in 7 days, he did something he hadn't been able to do in months. He delivered something real. And the experience of delivering, of being fully present within an action until it was complete, changed something in his relationship with work that no planning had been able to change. Not because he discovered a method, because he stopped avoiding the only place where anything can be built, the present moment. If you've made it this far, you've already demonstrated that you're capable of doing what most people can't, sitting down with an idea until the very end. That's no small feat. That's exactly the muscle these 7 days train. If you want to continue on this learning path, click on the video that's appearing on your screen, where I talked about Miyamoto Musashi's secret to becoming unbeatable at anything. I'm sure you'll enjoy the content taught in this video. Thank you very much for your attention, and remember, be present. Walk with honor, follow the path. Until the next video.